Hello, I'm Charles Thomas, and welcome to Good News Center, Virginia. Today we have a very special episode. We're very excited to have members of the Ralph Bunche Alumni Association here today. With us we have Miss Claudette Jordan, Miss Nadine Lucas, and Miss Urzetta Lewis, correct? All right. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Ralph Bunche Museum or high school that's going to become part of the museum down in King George. One of the things I want to know, and I'm sure everybody out there wants to know, is tell us a little bit about who Ralph Bunche was or is, and a little bit of history about the putting together the school.
Well, I'm going to talk about the history of Ralph Bunche School and how it impacts King George County, because King George is an area that has a rich history with events and situations that have played an integral part in the growth of the United States of America from colonial times through Civil War, through present time, including the Civil Rights Movement, and continuing through today. When we talk about Ralph Bunche School, we're talking about a school that its origin is steeped in the ugly part of American history because it's during the Jim Crow era. And this is where we have the separate but equal was the norm. And many people are aware of the fact that the Prince Edward County case, which was included in the landmark Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, that was argued and won by Thurgood Marshall in 1954, but they failed to realize that it was not the first case. There were several cases prior to that, and King George and Ralph Bunche School played a major part in that. There were three counties. There was King George, and there was Gloucester County, and there was Surry County. And these three counties were the first areas where suits were filed by Negroes to give Negro students school facilities equal to those of whites. These were test cases in which the demands of the students were directed by the NAACP. This was the beginning of the fight that would eventually spread throughout the South, and the NAACP attorneys thought that Virginia was ideal because it's the upper South, and so it was the best place to get started. So the entire South was watching to see what would happen, and the suit also caught the attention of Northerners. The King George students were represented by attorney Martin A. Martin of Richmond, who was assisted by attorney Spotswood W. Robinson of the Richmond-based law firm of Hill, Martin, and Robinson. So Mr. Martin filed a civil suit in the District Court of the United States of the Eastern District of Virginia on behalf of the plaintiffs. And the defendants in the case were the School Board of King George County, which included Mr. R.E. Owens, who was the chairperson, Mr. A.W. Walker, and Mr. W. Dandridge. Those were the people who were named. The division superintendent, who was Mr. T. Benton Gale, and Mr. T. Benton Gale was the superintendent not only for King George County, but also for Stafford County at that time.
Which we have a middle school named after.
Exactly. So this suit became known as Civil Action 631, and there were many inequalities that were noted in that suit. So we had many hearings that took place in Richmond throughout 1947 and 1948. We had Federal District Judge Sterling Hutchinson, who presided over the case, and on July 9th of 1948, when it appeared that the court would issue an injunction ordering specific improvements at the King George Training School for Negro pupils, King George officials and supervisors met with their counterparts from the city of Fredericksburg, from Stafford County, to consider constructing a consolidated school for Negro high school pupils in the Fredericksburg area to serve these three localities. Well, the parents in King George rejected this idea because of the travel distance, which I understand. So Civil Action 631 resulted in a July 29, 1948 Federal District Court order by Federal Judge Sterling Hutchinson for equal education facilities for Negro and white children in King George County. Now, the injunction cited the county for discrimination by providing Negro pupils inadequate sites and buildings and an uncredited high school, an inferior library, inferior laboratory, and no course offerings in typing, chemistry, geometry, and biology. So in compliance with the federal district court order, a number of improvements were made. The students prepared to enter the school on its opening on September the 8th of 1948. So there were leaders from the NAACP, there were leaders from the Virginia Teachers Association, the attorneys for the Negro pupils and the parents, and they inspected the improvements and found that they were unsatisfactory and not in compliance with the court order. Mm-hmm. So what was the problem was that there was not enough time for these major improvements that still needed to be done. So on the advice of the attorneys, Martin Robinson, the students in the suit did not register at the Negro High School. And so they were accompanied by Attorney Martin and NAACP State Secretary W. Lester Banks, and they sought admission to the White High School. Now, this is 1948, so we have African Americans who are trying to enter the White High School. Well, they were met by Superintendent T. Benton Gale, and of course they were denied admission, citing Section 140 of the Virginia Constitution, which stated that white and colored children shall not be taught in the same school. So Attorney Martin asked for a citation for contempt of court for the school board and the superintendent. And Judge Hutchison gave the defendants until Friday, November the 5th, to answer the contempt citation. And meanwhile, the county school board voted unanimously to drop physics, geometry, biology, and chemistry from the white King George High School curriculum to take effect on November the 5th. So I want you to think how that went over.
I was going to say that could not have been a very well-received decision.
No, it was not. In fact, it said that this led to a storm of protests, and it also led to a special bond issue election, which was scheduled on November the 6th, to allow the county to borrow $150,000 to construct a new Negro high school, and the voters approved this bond issue of a vote of 322 to 245. And the new facility was to be built to comply with the school equalization order.
So let me just ask a question right here. So the school was not up to standards.
The training school was
not. The training school was not up to standards. So what the Negro kids did was try to get admission into the white high school.
Yes.
And at that point, they dropped all of these classes and
to try to make it equal.
And when we come back, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we talked a little bit about equal, separate but equal, that really wasn't equal back then. And I want to make sure that we share that information with our viewing audience. So we'll be right back after this message.